Look at your hand right now, whatever shade it is. Whether you are pale enough to be mistaken for a piece of paper or dark enough to absorb sunlight. Like a solar panel, that color did not come from nowhere. It came from one of the longest, strangest, most dramatic transformations in the entire history of life on Earth. And the wildest part? It was not random. It was not an accident. It was not some cosmic roll of the dice. It was a survival story, a slow-motion biological negotiation between your ancestors and the sun. And the sun, for the record, was absolutely not playing fair. The answer involves vitamin D, cancer, folate, Africa, ice ages, ancient farmers who accidentally rewired their own evolution, and one surprisingly ruthless star sitting 93 million miles away that caused all of this, and has absolutely no regrets. So let us follow the science all the way back to the beginning, because what you are about to find out will change how you look at every human being you have ever seen. Here is something that sounds impossible until you actually think about it. Every single person alive on Earth today, every single one, is descended from ancestors who all had dark skin. Not most of them. Not the majority, every single one. Around 300,000 years ago, when Homo sapiens first appeared in Africa, the entire species was dark-skinned. There were no pale people. There were no fair-skinned populations anywhere on the planet. The concept of lighter skin did not even exist yet in humans. Think about what that actually means. Every person you have ever seen in a history book, every ancient civilization, every mythology, every cave painting, all of it traces back to one founding population that looked nothing like a significant portion of the modern human species. And that means at some point in history, something enormous happened. Something so powerful and so deeply written into our DNA that it reshaped the physical appearance of entire populations across multiple continents. So what was it? What changed? That is exactly what we are going to find out. Most people treat skin like it is just packaging. The bag your body came in, the wrapping that holds your organs, together while you walk around arguing with strangers on the internet. But skin is an organ. Your largest organ, in fact, and it is doing about 47 different jobs. Simultaneously, most of which you never think about and never thank it for. One of those jobs, arguably the most important, is protecting you from UV radiation. UV radiation is the invisible energy the sun fires at Earth constantly and relentlessly. And it is not your friend. UV light breaks chemical bonds. It damages DNA. It causes mutations in your cells. And if those mutations pile up in the wrong places over enough time, they turn into cancer, specifically melanoma, one of the most aggressive forms of skin cancer in existence. Now here is where skin color becomes critical. The pigment that gives skin its color is called melanin, and melanin is, in the most literal biological sense, a sunscreen, a natural built-in, always-on UV filter. The more melanin your skin contains, the darker it appears, and the more effectively it blocks UV radiation from penetrating into the deeper layers where your DNA lives. Dark skin is not just a look, it is a shield. Here is where it gets genuinely complicated. UV radiation does not just attack your skin cells. It also attacks something inside your body. Something small, invisible, and critically important. Something that, if you destroy it in the wrong person at the wrong moment, can end a pregnancy before it even begins. The molecule is called folate. It is a form of vitamin B9, and it flows through your bloodstream doing essential biological work. Folate is critical for the development of the neural tube in embryos. The neural tube is the structure that eventually becomes the brain and spinal cord. Without sufficient folate in the first few weeks of pregnancy, sometimes before a woman even knows she is pregnant, the neural tube can fail to close properly. The consequences are catastrophic. Severe developmental abnormalities, miscarriage. Now here is the problem. UV radiation destroys folate. When UV light penetrates the skin and reaches the bloodstream, it breaks folate molecules apart. In equatorial Africa, with no clothing, no shelter, no sunscreen, UV exposure was constant and unavoidable. This created a second devastating selection pressure. Lighter-skinned women with less melanin had more UV penetrating deeper, destroying more folate, causing more neural tube defects, losing more pregnancies. Two completely independent threats, one biological solution. Dark skin in Africa was not just useful, it was mandatory. Between roughly 70,000 and 100,000 years ago, groups of Homo sapiens began leaving Africa. It was not a single dramatic event. No one organized a meeting. No one announced a great migration. It was slow generational drift. A group moves a little further than their parents did. Their children move a little further still. Over thousands of years, humans spread through the Middle East, into Europe, across Asia, and eventually into the Americas. And as they moved north, something fundamental about their environment changed. The sun got weaker. Not the sun itself. The sun remained exactly as indifferent and nuclear as always. But at higher latitudes, sunlight hits Earth at a lower angle. It passes through more atmosphere before reaching you. UV radiation is filtered out. Days are shorter. Winters are long and dark. The sky is overcast for months at a time. In Northern Europe, Northern Asia, in Canada, the UV environment is dramatically different from equatorial Africa. Instead of relentlessly intense radiation you need to block, you now have weak, intermittent radiation you desperately need to absorb. And suddenly, the dark skin that was perfect in Africa became a problem. Vitamin D is synthesized in the skin when UVB radiation hits a compound in your skin cells. Your skin is literally a solar panel. It uses sunlight as an energy source to manufacture this essential molecule, and vitamin D is not optional. Not even a little bit. It is absolutely fundamental to human health. Vitamin D regulates calcium and phosphorus absorption in the gut. Without it, calcium does not get properly absorbed no matter how much you eat. Without calcium, bones do not mineralize correctly. In children, severe vitamin D deficiency causes rickets, a disease that softens and deforms the bones, bows the legs outward, causes the skull to flatten and stunts growth. In adult women, vitamin D deficiency can cause softening of the pelvic bones, making childbirth extraordinarily dangerous, sometimes impossible. Women with severe deficiency had dramatically higher rates of death during labor. But vitamin D deficiency does not stop at the skeleton. It impairs immune function. It affects muscle strength. It influences cardiovascular health. Some research links chronic deficiency to depression and cognitive decline. Now put a dark-skinned person in Northern Europe 40,000 years ago. Their melanin is blocking the very UV they need to make vitamin D. Their bones weaken. Their children develop rickets. Women die in childbirth. Dark skin in the north. In a world with no supplements, no fortified food, no medicine, was a death sentence stretched across generations. For a long time, scientists assumed the lightening of European populations happened gradually over hundreds of thousands of years, a slow, steady evolutionary drift as people moved north. Recent ancient DNA analysis has completely demolished that assumption. Early European hunter-gatherers, the people who lived in Europe for tens of thousands of years, after the initial migration from Africa, were still significantly dark-skinned. Even after living at northern latitudes for a very long time, they had not dramatically lightened. The most famous example is Cheddar Man. He lived in what is now Britain approximately 10,000 years ago. Ancient DNA analysis published in 2018 revealed he likely had dark to medium dark skin, dark curly hair and blue eyes, a combination that looks almost paradoxical to modern eyes because we now associate blue eyes with very pale skin. But 10,000 years ago, that combination was completely normal. The extremely pale skin we associate with Northwestern Europeans. Today, the kind that burns in about 12 minutes of summer sun, appears to have spread widely only in roughly the last 6,000 to 8,000 years. In the full 300,000-year history of our species, that is less than the last 3% of our existence. Pale skin in Europe is shockingly, almost embarrassingly recent. The answer is one of the biggest transitions in human history, and almost nobody talks about its effect on skin color. The Neolithic Revolution, the switch from hunting and gathering to farming. When humans transitioned to agriculture, their diet changed completely. Hunter-gatherers ate a varied diet that naturally included significant amounts of vitamin D, fatty fish like salmon and mackerel, organ meats, shellfish, and other animal products that are among the richest dietary sources of vitamin D in existence. Farming populations ate mostly cereals, wheat, barley, oats, rye, carbohydrates. Their dietary vitamin D intake did not just drop, it collapsed. Suddenly, populations that had been getting by with modest UV-synthesized vitamin D, because their diet was also contributing were now almost entirely dependent on whatever their skin could produce. If their skin was still fairly dark, that was not enough. The selection pressure for lighter skin intensified dramatically. But there was a second factor. Farming communities were large, dense, and sedentary. In a farming village of hundreds connected to other villages, a beneficial mutation can spread through thousands of descendants in just a few generations. The combination, dietary vitamin D, collapse plus population density, essentially hit the fast-forward button on European depigmentation. Here is something that genuinely surprises most people. Skin color is not controlled by a single gene. There is no dark skin gene and light skin gene where one dominates the other. It is far more complicated than that. Skin pigmentation is a polygenic trait controlled by dozens of different genes working together. Genes that influence how much melanin is produced, what type of melanin is made, how melanin granules are distributed inside skin cells, and how the skin responds to UV exposure over time. And here is what makes this truly remarkable. Different populations that independently evolved lighter skin did not use the same genes to do it. East Asians and Europeans both have significantly lighter skin than equatorial Africans, but the genetic variants responsible for lighter skin in East Asians are largely different from the variants responsible in Europeans. They arrived at similar outcomes through completely different molecular routes. This is called convergent evolution. The same adaptive solution, lighter skin in low UV environments, and discovered independently through completely different genetic pathways by separate populations on separate continents. When evolution keeps reinventing the same solution from scratch, that is as strong a signal as biology ever gives you. Here is the one that genuinely makes people stop and stare. Every single person alive today with blue eyes, every single one, no exceptions, is descended from one specific individual. One person, one mutation, one moment, somewhere around the Black Sea region, approximately 6,000 to 10,000 years ago. Before that individual was born, the entire human species had brown eyes. Everyone. Brown. Brown. Nothing but brown as far back as you go. Then this one mutation appeared, a change that reduced melanin production specifically in the iris, and it spread slowly at first, then faster because it was likely genetically linked to skin pigmentation variants that were themselves under strong selection pressure. Now consider something as seemingly ancient and fundamental as blue eyes, something used to sort and categorize humans. Throughout history, it is younger than the invention of agriculture. It is younger than Stonehenge. It is younger than the domestication of the horse. We treat certain human traits as ancient and primordial when they are, in geological terms, basically brand new. The version of humanity we think of as fixed and permanent is still being written. Which skin tone fact surprised you most? Drop it in the comments. And if this kind of science is what you are here for, subscribe. More is coming.